U20 vs. Blue Lock is an arc that focuses on one of the main problems that began this series. It's a display of how bad Japanese soccer truly is. An important assessment of this very fact is the International 5 beating Blue Lock's strongest 5 players at the time with minimal to no effort. As we would see later on, the other U20 teams are quite formidable, Kaisen being a good example of how strong the U20 international players are, especially in comparison to what Blue Lock is facing, which is quite literally the worst of professional play within their age range, and the fact that they are able to keep pace is a very important sign of how far Japanese soccer has truly fallen. At its core, this game is about evolution beyond baseline play, not only showing a remarkable amount of growth since the story's beginning. Each player in Blue Lock has been able to fit themselves into the puzzle of this game perfectly. Framework for a story beat of this magnitude has been waiting in the wings since the series beginning. The choice to enter, elimination rounds, skill and tenacity to advance to the next stage. It's been a culling game since the very moment a ball had been kicked by anyone. So the stage against one of the biggest teams in the nation is where it is do or die for every player involved. It's out with the old and in with the new, or are the classics too iconic to lose out to new blood? When talking about this arc, there's an important through line to consider, and that is the struggle to exist. In the same way the Blue Lock program struggled to come about, the players within its walls have been struggling to prove their existence not to just Japan, but to the world. They are a representation of Japanese soccer's central dilemma of stagnation without a proper way to move beyond that very stagnation. They are a newer, hungrier generation that has to be molded into the international faces of Japanese soccer, which is a sentiment seen on both sides of the field. Ryusei Shido and Sei Itoshi spearhead the U20 team, being the only scorers. Not to say that their other teammates are nothing without them, because they do a great deal in their own right, but it would be wholly unjustified and blatantly lying to say that they would have won without both of them. A new generation led its predecessors to a far more competitive soccer game than they could have produced alone. Because of this development, Shido's inclusion presents a small contradiction of fighting against new genes being put into soccer. After all, he's proof of this very idea, and so too is Sei, but that's neither here nor there, I suppose. Regardless, Blue Lock found itself a spectacle, showing off those new genes to tremendous success. Nico's defensive play, Baro's chaotic control of field, Rayo's copycat technique, and Gagamaru's goalkeeping. Each person fits in like they are supposed to, whether they are fulfilling a striker's role or not. The sense of the individual to play a specific role on the field makes each play far more important, because not everyone is trying to score a goal, but understand themselves better. Being a striker is not what matters most. As a matter of fact, that very drive to be just that in a very early stage of metavision is what drives Nico to his defensive position. Being able to see the field in such depth, becoming a defensive weapon, makes it so Nico can operate as a striker and not simultaneously. Positional changes for Blue Lock players was an inevitable change, certainly, but who becomes what in this game was solely up to the individual, especially with each given awakening or star performance. So the meat of this arc lies within numerous leading actors in Blue Lock, beginning with Rayo. Rayo's development in the form of his chameleon technique may seem like a cop-out at first glance, as it's a trope found in another massively popular sports manga. However, rereading previous arcs to understand his development can make his transformation understood easier. He's been traveling alongside Nagi for his entire soccer career, walking in his shadow and propping him up on a pedestal. Rayo's achievement of the chameleon, first with the gyro shot, then his trap, clearly speaks to both his role as a follower and his fascination with people's soccer talents. He has never been fit for the role of a striker, only propping up someone else to be just that. As they say, mimicry is the greatest form of flattery, so for someone who values talented players, it's no big surprise. Bachira's place is decently complicated, or more like a mixed bag in terms of showings. The mixture of himself and his monster creates an unpredictable player capable of amazing plays, but he is no Boro, Rin, or Nagi. Bachira is made to play a supporting role despite his golden goal being stripped from him in the previous arc, leading to what should have been a moment where he scores a point for himself. Then again, it also makes sense that he doesn't score. His play is still instinctual, still reliant on his imaginary friend to make his amazing breakthroughs. He's rejected his monster before, then integrates it back into himself again. Speaking clearly, he's not ready to take a big moment for himself because he's still undercooked. Boro has always been a wild card who rose above his limitations to achieve greater heights. His borderline obsession with defeating Isagi and becoming the best in the world makes him a character who is both chaotic and dominant in play. His goal is presented as the arc's most influential, but not its most important. He's Blue Lock's greatest asset thanks to his solo action play, yet one of its biggest weaknesses because of his predictable pattern when Isagi is in the equation. Nagi is who he's always been, a prodigy in every sense of the word. His goal is what introduces Blue Lock and establishes them as a threat. This goal following Reen's faulty impersonation provides a strong sense of originality that is needed for Blue Lock to hold a candle to U20. Each player has to go beyond personal grudges or squabbles. They have to forge a goal for themselves and only that. Nagi has always played without a strong ego, so his talent picks up this slack for him. He is this game's tone setter, distinguishing himself as a talent amongst talents, even when facing some of the best Japan has to offer. This arc has been a long time coming for Isagi, from his charge into Blue Lock, the penalty game, and his first encounter with Nagi. He's a player that's always been just behind the curve. He's reinvented himself so many times to simply keep pace in competition against blossoming talents like Rin Itoshi, Ryusei Shido, and now Sei Itoshi. For a large amount of this story, he's felt like the bridesmaid, never the bride. The strongest on paper, not in practice. Trapping, dribbling, shooting, his specs always pale in comparison to others. His battle against Naruhara is proof of this because he's not capable of fighting on his own, and being able to fight on your own is what makes a player a true striker after all. Yet he steadily built himself up to that goalpost. So his game-winning goal, taking advantage of luck thanks to Rin and Sei's sibling battle to make it, is his character's payoff. It's a solo play because he read the field better than anyone else. Yes, it is predictable. Yes, it's only right this arc of his story ends this way, but it foreshadows what's next to come. It brings everything to a fever pitch. Japanese soccer receives new genes, Isagi has cemented himself as a real threat, and Japan can finally see a world never before seen by the U20 team. Each of these players carve a place well defined within this arc, but none more so than Rin Itoshi. Rin acts as a centerpiece for this part of Blue Lock. To be more specific, his relationship with his older brother is that centerpiece. Having been built up a decent bit until now, it explains quite a bit of Rin Itoshi's insane soccer skill. He represents an ideal striker, an individual who can enact his desire for goals without much issue or help, which is exactly what Sei Itoshi wanted him to be. Sei Itoshi lost his ego. He lost his hunger, and not only disappointed himself, but his little brother. Their dream died because of whoever shattered Sei's will to be a striker. The whole point of a midfielder is to create chances for forwards to score and to disrupt attacks. They make soccer easier for strikers. Upon looking at this aspect of Sei's character, things start to make a lot more sense. Rin has been chained to his brother's hip since the beginning of his soccer career. He's been chained to his brother's dream and ego. He never had something of his own, so Sei gave that to him. When Sei returns to Japan and Rin demeans him for giving up on their dream, Sei found the perfect opportunity to resign himself to being a supporter for his younger brother. He wanted to be the best midfielder so that Rin could be the best striker. Sei released his younger brother from his dream so Rin could dream for himself. Older siblings are not the end-all be-all of younger siblings' dreams and expectations. This is something Sei knew, so he crushed Rin for that exact reason. Gone was that hopelessly dreaming little brother. Found was the young man with an ego ready to face down anyone. By the time this arc rolls around, it's clear that Rin hadn't fully abandoned his brother's influence because he wears his number and mimics his shots. They even go ego versus ego, and the potential of Rin as a player exceeds Sei even if for one play, demonstrating that his potential exceeded his, which leads to Isagi's star moment and the development of Rin's grudge against Isagi. This grudge makes sense not out of jealousy, but the fact of Sei overlooking his little brother once again. Sei doesn't acknowledge Rin not because he's not worth it, but because he wants to maintain that hunger to reach his dream. Once again, Sei is in a position that would support his brother come the World Cup. Blue Lock vs U20 is a roller coaster of an arc because it's predictable at times and deceptively deep. Between the real competition constantly being output and difficulty of maintaining meaningful headway, this arc does what it needs to by making everything build up to the juggernaut ahead of these young players. The Neo-Egoist League is what they'll face next, but for now, resting on a hard-earned victory in the face of their biggest challenge yet is well deserved and something we should do too. Thank you all so much for watching. Please stay safe out there and have yourselves a damn good one. I'll see you all next time.